So I want to talk about something a little different today. It still pertains to the same topic, the law of attraction. And if you're new to the law of attraction series, my name is Susan Ferraro. I have a website, susanf.com, where you will find more of the law of attraction series. And I am a mindset coach and creator of a program called Easy Peasy LOA, which is a 6-step system for making the law of attraction freaking easy. And I didn't always do this. I was in the fashion industry for many years, and if you know me, you know that. If you're new to me, that's new to you. And during my life, including when I was in fashion, up until the past few years, as I've been creating these tools, as I've done this work on myself, I have noticed a theme in my life. And that is what I want to talk about today. This is a very personal story. It's very near and dear to my heart, literally. And it's something that I need to bring out into the open. I need to stop hiding. And this is something about me. I'm never going to feel free until I express this. So that's what I want to talk about today. And it starts with, I want to start with coming out of the fashion industry. I started noticing things in my life, like where I was triggered, what made me cry, who I admire, all of these things that now I recognize are tools for seeing what our belief system is. But at the time I didn't. They were just becoming stronger, more apparent to me. And one of those triggers, one of the main triggers, was I would get really pissed off. My blood would boil whenever it came to someone judging what someone else is wearing. And I thought this was interesting because it doesn't seem like a big deal, right? But for some reason, it would get under my skin. I would defend the person, even if I didn't know them, even if they were on TV. It would really set me off. And ironically, I was in fashion. I was a designer, and I was surrounded by other designers and merchandisers and people in fashion. This was a common occurrence. You know, there are no accidents. And it was all around me. And it could be, you know, someone at work, one of my best friends, my mom making a comment about someone's dress. My mom actually doesn't really do that, but it could have been someone making a comment about someone's dress, and it would set me off. And I realized that I thought for a while that it was the judgment, just judgmental people. And judgmental people did trigger me a little bit. But what I realized was that it actually was what they were judging. It was that they were judging that person's expression. And I thought to myself, how could anyone's expression ever be wrong? I didn't believe that anyone's expression could be wrong. And this hurt me for some reason, even if I didn't know the person. And another thing I started to notice was I began to cry all the time. I had left my career and I was burnt out. I had adrenal fatigue, I had hypothyroidism, and my body was just so out of whack. And I would start to cry for what felt like no reason. And it could be anything on the TV that I would start to cry at, or I would watch a video online or have a thought and I would start to cry. And I started to do the same thing with this. And I was like, why? What is it about these things that are making me cry? Am I just emotional? Is it just my hormones? What is it? And I realized that everything that made me cry was when someone was in full alignment with who they were and they were fully expressing themselves. So it would be like, So You Think You Can Dance, when those dancers were dancing and they were so in it, just full self-expression, that would make me cry. I'm getting filled up just thinking about it. Well, the Voice, right? This would make me cry. Other videos of artists and singers and dancers, anyone who was in a state of full self-expression, I would lose it, and it would be really hard for me to hold it back. And I was not known as a crier. I was never a big crier, and all of a sudden I would cry uncontrollably and sob. It wasn't even like, you know, my eyes would fill up. It was sobbing. And so that started to link together somehow. I also started to notice that I started to think about who I admire, and there were 2 women in particular who I really admired and thought were amazing women for what they did, but I didn't understand why. And they seemed like polar opposites. And those women were Madonna and Malala. And I would look at them and be like, these 2 women are like my favorite women in the whole wide world. Why do I admire both of them? They seem so different. And really, after pinpointing what it was, I realized that they were actually very much alike. And to me, they both stood for full self-expression. So when I started picking apart what I loved about them, I saw that they said what they needed to say. They stood for what they believed in. They spoke out about what they believed in. And they expressed themselves, not for others, for themselves, for their beliefs. That was what they were doing. They were aligning with their beliefs and what they believed in and what was true for them. And that is what drew me to them. So I started to put these things together. Another thing I started to look at was how I felt when I left the fashion industry. And I've talked about this in other videos briefly. But I realized that even now that I was out of the hectic fashion industry, I still had this undeniable feeling of feeling stifled. And I grabbed my throat now intentionally, but at the time I would grab my throat at that feeling and I didn't understand why. And I felt this stifled feeling. Yes, in my career, I felt unfree, but it also ran through my relationships, every single one of them. Even though they were different men, I felt the same way in each one of them, stifled. Every single time I would try to put myself out there in some way that was scary for me, I would feel stifled. I secretly auditioned twice to sing. Once was to help some people record songs that they were writing, and once was for a band when I was in fashion already, and this was a dream I had given up on. And as I was auditioning, my throat closed up. It happened both times in both auditions. And I would go in and let it out, and they would encourage me to do more because I did well in the first try. And that was it. It was like once I had feedback from them and got into my head, my throat would close up and my body would shut down. I'm actually sitting here telling you this story with a sore throat because when I decided last night that I was going to make this video, I got a sore throat and I still have it right now. So all of this was pointing to self-expression. And as I realized that, it was like aha moments, light bulbs going off all over the place. And I had to get to the root. I've talked about this before too. I'm a root girl. I got to get to the root of things. And I knew that this had to start somewhere in my past. So I started going through memories like an old filing cabinet. And that's what started helping me create some of the forgiveness work that I do now. And I was shuffling through these things and realized that there was such a theme of me not being able to express myself, particularly through fashion, before I could remember. When I was young, I was born loving clothes. To me, that was my natural way of expressing myself, or at least one of them. All I did when I was little was play dress up, and I wanted to wear the things that I wanted to wear. And every time I wasn't allowed, because most of the time, no fault of my parents, most of the time, the things that I wanted to wear looked like the Solid Gold Dancers or Madonna, and I was a very young child. And I was very drawn to black, and I was very aware of my sexuality. And for no reason whatsoever, it was just something that was in me, and I wanted to express that. So a lot of the things that I wanted to wear were not appropriate for a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. So there were lots of clothing wars, and that trickled on throughout my life. Going through elementary school, it was always too sexy or too much or too this or too that, and I wasn't allowed to wear it, and I would try to sneak clothes to school and get caught, and all kinds of stupid little clothing wars. But every time it happened, it was another notch on the it's not safe to express yourself. And there were other things going on. My dad was a very loud man, so if he yelled, it would make me shudder. And it was, again, not his fault. It was the meaning that I was attaching to these things. He was probably just a frustrated parent. But when I would hear him yell, I would get so scared. And it would make me feel afraid to speak up about things. And it was just a series of these events that lumped on top of each other, cultivated this belief in myself that it was not safe for me to express myself. So as I got older, going through elementary school into junior high, and I was a trendy kid. Like I kept up with the other kids, but it wasn't really who I was on the inside. Like it wasn't about trends. I wanted to express what I wanted to wear. I wanted to wear it because it felt like my mood, who I was that day. It was how I showed people who I was. And I remember at 13, I was finally allowed to start experimenting. I still wasn't allowed to dye my hair, but I was allowed to shave it up the back, and I had a really cool haircut, and I was allowed to start experimenting with clothes. And I remember this girl in the ninth grade. She kind of dressed like Cyndi Lauper, punk vibe, and I loved her style. And I was like, that's how I want to be. That's what I want to be able to do, my own way, but that's what I wanted. So that's when I started experimenting. And like overnight, I went from looking like all the other kids to playing with clothes and coming out with these crazy outfits and literally just experimenting, playing. It was like art. And I was allowed to wear them to school. And I honestly can't remember how long I did this, which I'll get to in a second. I think I blocked it out. But it had to have been at least a week, or it might have been like half a school year to the end of school. I don't know. But as I started to do this, every day after a certain period of school, we would have different periods and you'd have to switch classes. And after this certain period of school, this girl would come up the stairwell. She was in the ninth grade as well. And I would come out of my class and she would take one look at me, her and her posse, and she would ridicule me and tear me apart for what I was wearing. And I remember standing there like a deer in headlights, shocked. Like this girl who didn't even know me or notice me before I started wearing these things was now ripping me to shreds because of what I was wearing. And it was public. It was humiliating. And I remember just like this sick feeling that I would feel after this class. And that's when I say that I blacked out, I don't know how long this went on. But what I do remember is the next year coming back to school in the ninth grade, I was completely different. I no longer wanted to express myself. In fact, I was rebelling against fashion. I was rebelling against clothes. All I wanted to wear were the same sweatpants all the time. And I didn't even want to go to school that much anymore. And at the same time, I started to rapidly gain weight. And it was, nothing changed. My parents were getting divorced and, my mom was attributing it to the divorce or hormones or whatever. And I remember like it was nothing like that. And I didn't know why at the time. I only know why because I am repeating that pattern now. And I started rapidly gaining weight. And that caused me to feel even more shame. So I just wanted to hide. I did not want to express myself through clothes anymore. I just felt so safe being me out in the world. And so unsafe being me out in the world. And I started to pull away, retreat, stop going to school, start cutting school. But at the same time, I still had that desire to express myself. And I started drawing more and more of the things that I want to wear. And this is something that I always did. I have construction paper and crayons of me drawing sexy little dresses that I was too young to wear. That they were things that I wanted to wear when I was very, very young. And I started drawing a lot again because I couldn't do it myself. So that was my way of getting it out into the world. And I would style all my friends. They would call me before school started and I'd be like, wear this, wear this, wear this, wear this, tell them what not to wear, what to wear. And I would wear the same sweatpants or not go to school at all. And this went on all through high school until finally after high school. Again, I have no idea why this is happening. To me, it was just intense shame, humiliation, not wanting to be out in the world, not wanting to be seen, and at the same time, only wanting to be seen, but not letting anyone see me because I was ashamed. So it was this vicious cycle. And it started, then as I got out of high school, I discovered Drixoral, which was a sinus medication. And at that moment, when I took that, I realized, holy hell, I felt like it was a stimulant. I felt like I was on speed. I felt like everything was speeding up. And at the same time, it suppressed my appetite. I thought I found the magic pill. And all of a sudden, I started to shrink until I was actually too skinny. And I remember because I felt skinny, I felt more valuable. I felt okay playing with clothes again. I felt okay being seen again. And it was like, that gave me permission to be able to do it because I looked a certain way. And that, I didn't stay with that long. I lost the weight, but I started to gain it back. And then I went to fashion school, or then I went to New York. And when I was in New York, to be a star, which was really a singer or a dancer, and every time I tried to do that, something would happen. I would sabotage myself. It was getting expensive. I couldn't find a way into that industry. And it started getting harder and harder and harder and harder. And I would see the people in fashion school and it looked like they had clear direction. It looked like they knew where they were going. And I knew I had fashion talent. So even though I couldn't express it myself, I knew by drawing and styling other people that people would be like, you should be a designer, you should be a designer. And I always said, I don't want to do this for other people. I want to do it for me. And I never really fully understood what that meant. It was just a feeling that I had. But as I looked at that path and thought about where I was in the city with no money and trying to survive and become this famous person for, I didn't know why, I thought that would be the easier path. And then I took it. And as I took it, I realized how good I was, how talented I was. And I forgot about this bully. And throughout my career, there was one small blip of time where I had gotten a job at Banana Republic. And I had tried to get into Banana Republic 3 times. It was an awesome company to work for. And my best friend worked there, and I wanted to do handbags. And the first time I tried, it was for handbags. I didn't get it. They had a team. It was weird. I didn't get it for whatever reason. I gave them what I thought they wanted, and I didn't get it. The second time, same thing. It was for apparel. I gave them what I thought they wanted, and it was a great project, and I didn't get it. Third time, I had been through some stuff. I moved back to Pennsylvania for a year, came back to the city. I was starting over, starting fresh. And I had this attitude of, I'm coming back to fashion, and I don't, this is it. I want to express myself as a designer. And I remember my best friend got me this interview, and it was for handbags again. There was no longer a team, so it was going to be just me. And I created this project. I went in there with this project that looked nothing like Banana Republic. It was pure, unadulterated me. It was what was in my heart at the moment, and I let it out. And I went in there and I was like, you know what? I don't give a fuck if they like this or not. This is what I want to do right now. I showed it. It was completely unorthodox. It wasn't even in a portfolio. I rolled it out on the table, and the woman I was meeting with loved it, and I was hired on the spot. And that was my big lesson. And I didn't know this at the time, but it was a big lesson in what authenticity does for you, what it does for you when you stay true to you. And because I was staying true to myself, not only was that interview a success, not only was that interview easy, my project wasn't even finished. I just let it out on the page, and it was easy. It felt easy. Then, as I took the job, that was easy too. And I started creating just from my heart. There was no handbag collection. They wanted to develop a real handbag collection. And I was the one who was allowed to design and dictate where that aesthetic went. I had pure creative expression, and I was in heaven. And this lasted for 2 seasons. Maybe about 9 months. My bags were hitting the stores. Things were going really well. But naturally, they want to grow it. So now they're bringing in someone between me and the VP, right? And now, merchandising and sales and other departments are getting more involved. More cooks coming into the kitchen. So I'm starting to lose that creative freedom again, and I'm starting to feel that same stifled feeling. But I've experienced what it's like on the other side. So as I went further in my career, I'm not going to go through every stage, but as I went further in my career, I got more and more stifled. And no matter what I tried to create, using the law of attraction the whole time to deliberately create unheard of, unique career situations where I should have felt free. And lots of money, lots of success where I should have felt free. Everything that I thought that was going to make me feel free was not making me feel free. I still felt stifled in every area of my life. And as I came out and I've done this work, I realized how the universe works, how no matter what, it's always going to reflect back to us how we feel, which in turn tells us what we are believing about ourselves. And the same thing started to happen as I started to create the business that I have now, as I started to, I was trying to decide between nutrition and manifesting and spirituality. And in the nutrition piece, everything, I ate meticulously and I was working out constantly. And as I was trying to put myself out there, the same thing started to happen. I started rapidly gaining weight, and I didn't know why. I discovered it was my thyroid again, adrenal fatigue, and I had a slew of symptoms that were awful that I've spent the past few years, trying to correct. And I've been trying to correct it with things outside of me. So yes, food, I could tell you, I could be an endocrinologist by now. really understand what foods can hurt the thyroid, can help the thyroid. I realized how I was deficient in a lot of nutrients. I realized the root for me of those nutrients was, at first I thought vitamin D, then I realized it was magnesium, started to feel a little bit better, but I knew that there was more to it. And I remember reading the book by Dr. Lissa Rankin. It's Mind Over Medicine. And I remember reading this book as I was struggling so hard, pushing myself to exercise so hard to the point of my muscles fatiguing immediately. I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse, and I didn't know that I was deficient in these things, and I was fatiguing, and I would have to sleep all day, and I was a dictator with my food. And I remember reading that book and being like, this is what I believe. It's not just about food. I was so focused on the external that I had stopped looking at the internal, and I needed to go back inside and see where this was coming from. And that's what I've done over the past couple of years as I've been creating all of my work and the tools that I share with my clients and customers and my community. And through that, I realized that those memories that I couldn't think about, those memories, that memory of the bully where I thought about her and it made me cringe. It brought me right back there. It made me feel awful to think about that humiliated, shameful feeling. Those were the things that I needed to address. Those were the things I needed to face, because shame is a funny emotion. It's a funny emotion. It has a lot of power over you the more that you want to hide whatever you're feeling shame about. That's what gives shame its power. Shame is a very low vibrating emotion. And as you are holding on to shame, you are vibing at a belief that says, I am bad. I am not good enough. I am not worthy. I am not valuable. I am not lovable. Whatever it means to you, when you are holding on to feelings or beliefs that create feelings of shame, you are vibrating in that, and your reality is going to reflect those things back to you. So no matter how much money you have, no matter who you attract into your life, no matter what kind of success you have, no matter what you have, the feelings aren't going to go away. And that shows up like feeling stifled, shows up like feeling trapped, frustrated, restless. I felt so restless in my life. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't commit to anything or anyone. I felt the way that I treated myself was awful. I became the bully. So everything that she did to me, I started doing to myself. I ridiculed myself. I shamed myself. I made myself feel awful for the way that I looked. And the whole time, my body didn't need to be fixed. It needed to be heard. She was just trying to talk to me. And if I had listened, I heard her actually. I heard her say, play more. I heard her say, you need to eat this. I heard her, more chocolate. I heard her say, eat more spinach and chocolate. I heard her say, go to the sun. I heard her say, relax. I heard her say all of these things, and I ignored them because they were not what I thought she should do. And I ignored her and made her feel not valuable. I made her feel like that bully made me feel. That was, I took over her role. And it wasn't until I started releasing those beliefs and, diffusing those old emotional imprints. So now when I remember that, it's a faded memory. I had to forgive her. I did that through forgiveness work. I forgave her. I forgave all of the memories, the other charged memories that were leading up to her, all of the things after her. And then most of all, most importantly, I forgave myself. I forgave myself for allowing things to happen that I didn't really want to happen, for allowing people and events to take away my power, for allowing my power to be taken away, for allowing, for not listening to my body, for making her feel the same way that bully made me feel. I had to learn to forgive and let all of that go. And there was one last piece when it comes to healing shame. And I wouldn't be doing this right now if I hadn't done that work, because it would have been very hard to talk about had I not handled, forgiven, and diffused those old memories. I call them hot memories, charged memories, where they're hard to think about. And I knew that I had to talk about this with my community. And it's not because I'm trying to do something for you, to be brutally honest. And honestly, thank you for watching. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for hearing me. And I hope that this inspires you. I hope that it gives you, if you're looking for permission, some kind of permission, or even just entertains you for a little bit. I hope you got something out of it. I really do. But I had to make this video for me. I made it for my own freedom, because as you heal shame, what takes shame's power away is bringing what's in the dark into the light. And this was something I was hiding. I was hiding shame because I didn't want people to even know that I felt shame, but we all feel shame. We've all felt powerless. We've all felt helpless. And we've all felt these lower vibe emotions. And I didn't want people to know why I felt shame. It made me feel weak. But really, the strength is in talking about these things. The strength is in being yourself. When you're hiding these things because you don't want to be your true self, you are saying, my true self is not good enough. I was doing exactly what that bully was doing to me. And I know now that I've forgiven her that she couldn't have done anything that wasn't done to her as well. So I want you to keep in mind as you look in your own life and you look back at your own themes, because I promise you they're there. You might have one, you might have several. But remember, anything that's been done to you had to have been done to that person. And the same goes for how you're treating yourself. So if bullies is something that I feel strongly about, and I would, say I would never be a bully until I realized that I was actually bullying myself. So it's about getting really aware of what's going on and learning how to let that go. And part of that is learning how to speak about what's really going on for you. So yes, your beliefs and opinions, that's very important. That's part of speaking your truth, so to speak. But also sharing the things that are hard to talk about, where you are hiding, bringing whatever it is that you're hiding into the light. And that doesn't mean you have to do it on video like I'm doing. This is a step in the direction of the work that I want to create in the world, because I want to feel self-expressed. This is a tool or a modality or a medium that I am choosing to do that. You might simply need to just admit it to yourself, right? Or admit it to someone else. So everyone is different. But again, I just want to thank you for watching. I feel like I just set myself free. And if this has helped you, awesome. And I will see you next week for another episode of the Law of Attraction series.